The search for Spock brought Spock back from the dead. But to do it, the film killed something fans loved almost as much: the Enterprise herself. Did you know that shocking destruction wasn't even in the original script? Or that Spock's director hid his own name using a fake alias? Here are the 16 facts you didn't know. "16. The twist they added: destroying the Enterprise wasn't in the script. The film's most shocking moment: Kirk blowing up his own beloved starship, watching her burn across the Genesis sky, wasn't part of the original plan. According to producer Harve Bennett, the destruction of the Enterprise was not in the early drafts. It was added later when he and Nimoy realized the story needed a genuine life-or-death sacrifice, a real cost to Kirk's victory. Bennett was so reluctant that he privately vowed to restore the ship at the proper time, which he did, unveiling the Enterprise A at the end of the next film. The most gut-wrenching image in the movie, the death of Star Trek's most iconic vessel, was a late-stage rewrite designed to give the resurrection of Spock a price worth paying. 15. Nimoy hid his name behind a fake alias. Frank Force, Leonard Nimoy, directed the film and played Spock. But during production, he went to unusual lengths to conceal the character's return, protecting the movie's central mystery. Nimoy's name never appeared on any of the daily call sheets. In the script, Spock was referred to as Nakluv, Vulcan spelled backwards, and the role was credited to a fictional actor named Frank Force. Nimoy even voiced the Excelsior's turbolift computer, and that too was credited to the Phantom Frank Force. It was an elaborate bit of misdirection. The whole film is titled The Search for Spock, and the studio wanted to preserve suspense about whether he'd actually reappear. So the director hid his own most famous role behind a made-up name, searching, on paper, for a Spock played by nobody at all. 14. Nimoy became the first Star Trek actor to direct a Trek film. Handing the director's chair to a cast member was a gamble in 1984, and it changed the franchise forever. Leonard Nimoy became the first Star Trek actor ever to direct a Star Trek film, a precedent that reshaped how the series got made. Producer Harve Bennett initially had doubts, worrying Nimoy lacked broad filmmaking experience, but came around. Nimoy already knew the show inside out, sparing them the trouble of breaking in an outsider like the previous directors, who weren't even Trek fans. Nimoy had directed television, including episodes of Shatner's T.J. Hooker. His success here triggered a chain reaction. He directed the next film, too, and thanks to a favored nations clause in Shatner's contract, that meant Shatner got to direct Star Trek V. 13. The story was born from a fan poem. The entire plot sprang from an unlikely source: fan writing. Harve Bennett has said he got the idea for the film from a fan poem written from Kirk's perspective, grieving over leaving Spock behind. "I left you there. Why did I do that?" the poem read. That ache of guilt and unfinished business became the emotional engine of the whole movie. Kirk's refusal to accept the loss, his willingness to sacrifice his career, his ship, and his son to go back. Bennett wrote the script essentially working backwards from that feeling. It's a lovely piece of Trek history. The film that resurrected Spock grew from a single fan's poem about the pain of having abandoned him. The fandom didn't just love the movie, it helped write it. 12. Doc Brown was the villain, and Nimoy wanted Admiral Adama. The Klingon commander Krug was played by Christopher Lloyd, a startling choice at the time, since Lloyd was then famous as the burnt-out Reverend Jim on the sitcom Taxi, and hadn't yet become Doc Brown in Back to the Future. Nimoy admired his ability to play powerful, theatrical villains and cast him against comedic type. But Krug was almost someone else entirely. Nimoy's first choice was Edward James Olmos, the future Admiral Adama of Battlestar Galactica. And studio heads reportedly said, no, it's a great near miss. The definitive Klingon of the 80s films was nearly played by the man who'd become one of sci-fi TV's greatest captains. Instead, the future time-traveling Doc Brown got the role and gave it a gleeful, snarling menace. 11. Saavik was recast over a salary dispute. Fans noticed immediately that Lieutenant Saavik looked different because the role was recast. Kirstie Alley, who created the character in The Wrath of Khan, didn't return. By multiple accounts, including Nimoy's own autobiography, Alley's agent demanded a salary increase the production couldn't afford, and some sources add she feared being typecast. The part went to relative newcomer Robin Curtis, who had recently arrived in Los Angeles and befriended the head of Paramount's casting department. Nimoy met with her and gave her the role the very next day. It's a recurring Hollywood story, a breakout performance leading to a contract standoff and a studio simply moving on. Curtis played Saavik in this film and the next, giving the Vulcan a cooler, more restrained interpretation than Alley's fiery original. 10. There's a hidden pregnancy the film never mentions. One of Star Trek's strangest buried plot points lives in this film. On the Genesis planet, the resurrected Spock rapidly ages and experiences Ponfar, the Vulcan mating drive. And Saavik helps him through it in a quietly implied, intimate scene. Here's the secret. The writers intended that Saavik became pregnant with Spock's child as a result. That's why she remains behind on Vulcan at the film's end, a choice never explained on screen. But no reference to the pregnancy made it into the finished movie, and it was never followed up, leaving it in a permanent canonical gray area. So a major character potentially carried Spock's child into Star Trek history, and the films simply never mentioned it again. Fans have debated the phantom Spock baby for decades. Quick pause on the bridge. If this deep dive is earning it, hit like and subscribe because we beam up a classic every week. Now, back to Genesis, starting with the marketing blunder that spoiled the film's biggest secret. 9. The studio spoiled its own twist in the trailer. The destruction of the Enterprise was designed to be the film's great shock, and Paramount blew it. Believing the spectacular explosion would be a fantastic promotional hook, the studio instructed its PR department to put the footage right in the trailer, unbeknownst to the filmmakers. Nimoy and Bennett were furious, and on the DVD commentary, they discuss how much they hated the decision, fearing it turned fans against the movie before they'd even bought a ticket. Think of the emotional whiplash. Audiences had just lost Spock in the previous film, and now the marketing was announcing they'd lose the Enterprise too. The filmmakers built a devastating surprise, and their own studio handed it away in exchange for a louder trailer. 8. It was the second film of a secret trilogy. The search for Spock is rarely appreciated for what it truly is, the deliberate middle chapter of a planned 3-film arc. It sits precisely between The Wrath of Khan, which killed Spock, and The Voyage Home, which returned the crew triumphantly to Earth. This trilogy structure, death, resurrection, redemption, gives the 3 films a novelistic shape unusual for 1980s Hollywood. The search for Spock carries the heaviest dramatic burden. It's the film where the crew hits rock bottom, losing Kirk's son, their ship, and their careers, all to undo the death that anchored the previous movie. It's the dark, sacrificial center of the trilogy, the part where everything is lost so that everything can be regained one film later. Middle chapters are hard. This one earns its place. 7. James Horner returned to expand his Wrath of Khan themes. The music came from James Horner, back to build on the acclaimed score he'd written for The Wrath of Khan. For longtime viewers of this channel, Horner is a familiar name, the young composer whose Star Trek work launched a career that became Titanic, Braveheart, and Avatar. For The Search for Spock, he expanded and developed his existing Trek themes, giving the trilogy a sense of musical continuity that binds the 3 films together. His work here is darker and more mournful, matching a story steeped in death and sacrifice, before swelling toward hope in the resurrection finale. It was one of his last films before his career exploded into Hollywood's top tier, and part of the reason the middle film feels emotionally seamless with the masterpiece that preceded it. 6. Krug's lava pit death was a stop-motion puppet, one of the film's most memorable images. The Klingon Krug plunging into a river of lava as the Genesis planet tears itself apart was achieved with old-school movie magic. Industrial Light and Magic filmed Christopher Lloyd against a black screen, then rotoscoped each frame by hand and composited it with footage of a stop-motion puppet for the fall into the fire. Lloyd, meanwhile, struggled with the Klingon makeup in the heat. His co-star John Larroquette recalled he sweated quite a bit. And for the close-up of Krug grabbing a Genesis creature that attacks him, an ILM effects cameraman stood in for Lloyd entirely. The villain's spectacular demise was a patchwork of practical tricks, real actor, hand-drawn rotoscoping, and a puppet, stitched into one seamless plunge. 5. Nimoy convinced an Oscar-nominated legend to play a Vulcan priestess for the pivotal role of T'Lar, the Vulcan High Priestess who performs the dangerous ritual to reunite Spock's soul with his body. Nimoy landed a genuine acting legend. He personally convinced Dame Judith Anderson, the Oscar-nominated star of Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca, one of the most acclaimed actresses of her era, to don Vulcan robes and preside over the film's mystical climax. It was a remarkable coup for a science fiction sequel, lending the Falterpan ceremony real gravitas. Anderson was in her mid-80s at the time. The scene needed weight and solemnity to sell the impossible, the transfer of a living soul from one body to another. And Nimoy knew a screen legend's presence would provide it. He was right. T'Lar's ritual is one of the trilogy's most genuinely reverent moments. 4. Shatner helped fight a real fire on set, in full Kirk costume. Here's a wild behind-the-scenes moment. During production, a fire broke out on the Paramount sound stages. And according to Shatner's own memoir, Star Trek Movie Memories, he pitched in to help fight it while still in full Admiral Kirk costume and makeup. Picture it, the captain of the Enterprise in uniform, battling an actual blaze on a Hollywood lot. It's an oddly perfect image for a production about heroism and loss. The star literally fighting fire in character. The soundstage-bound shoot was already intense, with nearly the entire film shot on Paramount and ILM stages apart from a single day of location work. Add a real fire with Kirk himself on the bucket line, and you have one of the more surreal footnotes in Star Trek's production history. 3. It introduced the Klingon bird of prey and the Katra. For all its reputation as the quiet middle film, the search for Spock permanently enriched Star Trek's universe. It introduced the Klingon bird of prey, with its distinctive folding wings and cloaking device, which became arguably the most iconic Klingon ship in all of Trek, recurring across films and series for decades. And Nimoy's fingerprints shaped Vulcan mythology itself. This film established the Katra, the Vulcan soul that can be transferred and preserved, along with the Faltorpan refusion ritual and the sacred rites of Mount Celia. These weren't minor details. They became foundational pieces of Vulcan lore that later Trek would draw on again and again. A film often dismissed as a bridge between two better-loved movies quietly gave the franchise some of its most enduring concepts and its most beloved starship design. 2. It was a hit that beat its own budget by miles. Despite its reputation as the overlooked middle child, The Search for Spock was a genuine commercial success. Made for around $16 million, with roughly $4 million of that spent on special effects. The film grossed over $16 million in its first week alone from nearly 2,000 North American theaters, and went on to earn about $87 million worldwide. Nimoy, in his feature directing debut, even brought the film in under budget. Those numbers vindicated the enormous gamble of letting an actor direct, and proved the post-con Star Trek film series was a reliable box office force, not a fluke. The success cemented the trilogy plan and guaranteed the voyage home. which would become the most commercially successful of the original cast films. The middle chapter did its job. It kept the momentum alive. 1. The underrated bridge that made the trilogy possible. Step back, and the search for Spock's true importance comes into focus. Sandwiched between the beloved Wrath of Khan and the crowd-pleasing Voyage Home, it's often ranked lower than both. But without it, neither the resurrection nor the redemption could happen. It's the film that had the courage to make the crew pay a terrible price. Their ship, Kirk's son, their Starfleet careers, all sacrificed to bring one friend back. That willingness to inflict real loss is what gives the trilogy its emotional weight. It also launched Nimoy as a director, expanded Vulcan mythology, and delivered The Bird of Prey. A film remembered as a bridge turns out to be load-bearing. The sacrificial heart without which Star Trek's greatest trilogy simply collapses. Those were 16 facts most fans have never heard about the search for Spock. Which one got you? The Enterprise destruction that wasn't in the script? Or Frank Force? Beam your answer into the comments. If this earned it, hit like, subscribe, and send it to the friend who still tears up when the old girl burns. Until next time, the needs of the many.